Hi guys, Ian here, and this is the ooopusX Op.22 hybrid IEM. And after spending 2 weeks with this, I can confidently say this little hybrid IEM has no right to be just $34.99. As someone who's been through countless budget hybrids over the years, I approached the OP22 with cautious optimism. Another Mac-inspired shell with a gimmicky tuning dial, I thought, but OptusX has refined their formula here, delivering two genuinely distinct and musically satisfying bass presentations that fundamentally change how you interact with your music library. Now, the OP22 represents a thoughtful evolution from the previous OP24, stripping away complexity to focus on what matters: a cohesive hybrid driver architecture, solid build quality, and that addictive physical tuning mechanism that actually earns its place on the shelf. This is an IEM that prioritizes engagement and musicality over analytical precision, and in doing so creates a compelling case for itself in this increasingly crowded budget market. So let's begin my overall thoughts and opinions about the OP22. First, with the accessories. This is the retail box that it comes in. At the back here, there are some specifications. Let me read that out to you. The impedance is 22 ohms, sensitivity is 124 dB, and the frequency range is 10 to 40,000 Hertz. Now, for under $35, I would say the OP22 delivers a complete and pretty okay package. Now, inside the box, you'll get a user guide, two types of ear tips, small, medium, and large. I personally like the grippy one. It's a little bit more glossy, and I'm using that right now. Both of them, they sound pretty similar, so it depends on your preference. Then for the cable, it's a 2-core twisted cable terminated with the 3.5 headphone jack. It's got a Y split, but it doesn't come with the chin slider. But that doesn't matter because I don't really use the chin slider, and the ear hooks are pretty firm. And I would say the accessories that comes with this is pretty decent. The included cable is decent. The ear tips are actually pretty decent. And overall, I would say it's pretty alright when it comes to the accessories. Now, let's talk about the design and build quality. The OP22 carries a futuristic Mac aesthetic that defines OptusX's current lineup. And I have to admit, it looks pretty cool in person. The shells are compact, it's smoothly finished, with the tuning mechanism housing being the only interruption to the clean lines. The build quality is solid for the price with no visible seams or rough edges. One practical detail worth highlighting: the alignment indicators molded on the top of the shell here. These small markings ensure that you orientate the IEMs correctly before you insert it into your ear. A small but genuinely appreciated ergonomic touch for an IEM with the physical switch on the body. The nozzle is well proportioned and worked perfectly with included silicone ear tips, and it creates a pretty reliable seal without excessive insertion and depth. The visible vent on the shell surface is a necessary design for the dynamic drivers, managing the internal pressure and influencing the bass character. Now, one minor annoyance is the 2-pin connector isn't clearly marked, as you can see, for the left and the right channel, so you need to pay attention to the alignment of the indicators until you memorize the overall orientation. As for the fit and comfort, I would say the OP22 is pretty comfortable over extended listening sessions, and I particularly appreciate its modest size compared to many IEMs with larger, bulkier shells. The shell geometry is compact enough to sit flush for most ear shapes, and with the correct tip size, the seal is pretty consistent without requiring aggressive insertion depth. Now, the preformed cable hooks contribute meaningfully to the stability of the earphones in your ears during movement. The tuning dial housing does add a small amount of bulk to the IEM body, but in practice, it doesn't cause hotspots during normal listening. The dial sits naturally against the outer ear rather than pressing into it. Over-the-ear cable routing is pretty good. So I put these earphones through 3 to 4 hours listening sessions, and I don't feel any discomfort. And the lightweight design means that they essentially disappear into my ears once I'm immersed into my music. Alright, so let's talk about sound. First, the tone and timbre. The OP22 delivers natural, uncolored timbre that reads as authentic rather than artificially flavored. Now, vocals carry adequate body without sounding thick or congested, and the instrumental tones maintain their characteristic signatures. Now, the lower mid-range benefits from the coherent crossover handoff between the dynamic drivers and the balance armatures, creating a foundation that sounds organic rather than pieced together. The overall tonal balance does shift noticeably between the two tuning modes, but both maintain reasonable fidelity to source material. Now, this isn't an IEM that imposes a strong house sound on everything you play. Rather, it offers two different lenses through which to experience your music, both of which stay within the bounds of musical realism. Now, let's talk about the technical performance. As for soundstage, this is where the OP22 genuinely surprises me. The combination of the forward low treble tuning and the shell geometry produces a wider than expected presentation that consistently creates that impression of listening beyond the confines of the ear canal. Width is the primary dimension. The stage doesn't have extraordinary depth, but the left to right spread is impressively wide for a budget IEM. Now, listening to Supertramp's Crime of the Century, the famous studio space and reverb tails spread across the stage with genuine separation, and the channel distinction feels earned rather than artificial. So for $35, this level of spatial presentation is genuinely impressive. As for imaging, it sits solidly within the wide soundstage, with instruments maintaining consistent positions across the mix rather than drifting or smearing. The balance armatures contribute to the precise placement in the upper frequencies, while the coaxial dynamic drivers anchor the lower end with coherent positioning. It is not a holographic level kind of precision, but it's more than competent for the price that it's asking for. Now, as for detail retrieval, here's where the OP22 makes some compromises. The mid-range detail retrieval, while it's competent, falls short of the best technical performance at this price point. Something like the Truth Ear Pure resolves fine vocal texture and upper mid-range layering with a little bit more exacting touch. The OP22 isn't competing on pure resolution. Instead, it delivers a relaxed, listenable presentation that prioritizes musical flow over microscopic detail excavation. But that said, the balance armatures do contribute strong extension and resolution to the upper frequencies, meaning there's a genuine air and shimmer in recordings that call for it. The treble resolution is solid for the price, even if it's not analytically precise. Now, as for resolution, I would say overall is appropriate for this price point, perhaps slightly behind the technical leaders in the sub $50 space, but the OP22 compensates with tonal coherence and that engaging soundstage. The crossover architecture between the dynamic drivers and balance armatures is well implemented, avoiding the sense of a crossover seam that can sometimes betray budget hybrids. Alright, so let's talk about the sound signature. I'll post my graph somewhere up here. As for the sub bass, there are two modes, as I mentioned. In mode 0, the sub bass extension is present, it's honest without being exaggerated. It reaches deep when it's called for, but it doesn't artificially inflate the lowest octaves. The decay on sub-bass notes is well managed with minimal bloom, creating a clean and controlled foundation. Now, when you turn the switch to the solid dot, the sub-bass gains noticeable weight with authority. Now, the extension remains similar, but there's more physical presence and rumble. Electronic tracks and modern pop productions benefit from this added low-end heft. It doesn't become a bass hit IEM per se, but it definitely moves in that direction. As for the mid bass, when you are in the original mode, a mid bass is characterized by smooth, controlled presentation that draws close comparison to something like the JM1 target profile. Kick drums land with clean transients and adequate note weight, and bass guitar lines retain textural definition rather than merging into an undifferentiated mass of low frequency energy. Donald Fagen's The Night Fly is a great reference here. The tight, extended low end is reproduced faithfully, with each bass note landing and releasing without excessive overhang. Now, when you turn the switch to the bass mode, the mid bass gains satisfying warmth and body. The added low end weight is smooth rather than punchy. Now, this is not a V-shaped slam machine, but the added body underneath that music gives pop, hip-hop, and electronic music a more engaging foundation. Steely Dan's Aja illustrates the difference pretty well, where the Mode O keeps the kick drum crisp and well separated from the bass guitar, and when you switch to the solid dot, it adds satisfying authority and makes the groove feel more physical. Now, as for the mid-range, it's competent and it's enjoyable, though not the OP22's primary calling card. Tonal density is pretty reasonable, with vocals carrying adequate body and instrumental timbre that reads as pretty natural. The lower mid-range benefits from the coherent crossover handoff between the dynamic drivers and the BAs. Now, this is where the OP22 steps back slightly and is in the precision and micro detail retrieval in the mids. Johnny Mitchell's Case of You is a useful reference. The acoustic guitar and vocal intimacy comes through with reasonable presence, though fine micro details in breath and string attack doesn't surface with the resolution of the better technical performance in this price bracket. What it delivers instead is a relaxed, listenable mid-range that never sounds thin or recessed. Now, as for the pinna gain, this is where the OP22's tuning gets pretty interesting and potentially divisive. There's a forward presence peak in the 3 to 4 kHz region that adds energy to the lower treble. This brings instrument leading edges forward, enhances that perceived sense of spatial width, and it is the primary driver behind what the OP22 achieves in its impressive soundstage. However, now this also means that the track with aggressive upper vocal content or bright brass can push towards sibilance if the recording is already forward in that region. So dual flange ear tips option is quite worth trying for if who's pretty sensitive here for the pinna gain, as it pulls out that energy a little bit back. Now, this is a deliberate tuning choice and it's not a flaw, and it prioritizes staging and engagement over absolute neutrality. And as for the treble, I would say it is the most characterful element of the OP22. The dual balanced armature drivers contribute strong extension and resolution to the upper frequencies, and the overall impression is of a treble that reaches comfortably for air and shimmer without being harsh at the very top. Nils Lofgren's Keith Don't Go is a good test for treble balance. The high harmonic shimmer and pick attack on the fretted acoustic guitar comes through with good sparkle and detail. And the BA extension means that there is genuine air in the recording's upper register. Now, the upper treble is nicely controlled. The BA extension contributes to the resolution without producing the ragged energy that some budget BAs at the very top. And that's the overall sound signature of the OP22. Now let's compare this with the OP24, and I would say the OP24 feature a more Harman adjacent bass tuning with subtler differences between the dial positions. But as for the OP22, it offers a considerably more extreme bass differentiation between the modes, translating into a more meaningful and satisfying listening experience when you are actually engaged using the dial. All right, so let's conclude. I would say the ooopusX OP22 has earned a permanent spot in my budget IEM rotation. At $34.99, it delivers exceptional value, a functional physical tuning switch with two genuinely distinct and well-tuned bass profiles, an impressive soundstage that outperforms its price point, a solid build quality, and a cable that doesn't need immediate replacement. Now the forward 3 to 4 kHz tuning is deliberate choice, and it won't suit every listener or every recording. Those sensitive to lower treble energy or who listen to a lot of bright sibilant material may want to experiment with dual flange tips or look somewhere else. And if your priority is absolute technical precision and mid-range detail excavation, the Truth Ear Pure or similar competitors may be a better choice. But for listeners who want a budget IEM with genuine personality, a functional tuning system that actually gets used rather than just being a gimmick, and a bass response that steps away from typical sub $50 template, the OP22 makes a very compelling case. The ability to dial in your bass preference without removing the IEMs from your ears changes how you interact with your music library in a fun, engaging way. Alright, so that's my overall thoughts and opinions about the ooopusX OP22. I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up, and also please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. My name's Ian. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again in my next video. Cheers.